All right. We're going to talk a little bit about a terrific speech that Donald Trump gave last night, and two very interesting women who helped make that possible. Ivanka Trump, his daughter, and somebody you may not know nearly as well, Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who is the chair of the House Republican Conference. She is the fourth-ranking Republican in the House. She is a mother of three, and so she and Ivanka both have children, and both are approaching the question of child care in a very serious way. In addition, there are parts of the speech that relate to elder care, and as many women will tell you, that's very important because a lot of women now are kind of in a sandwich, where on the one hand they're taking care of their children, on the other hand they may be taking care of their parents. And so there's some very big complexities. And let me address directly those conservatives who seem concerned that Donald Trump actually cares about families and actually cares about children and about mothers who stay home, and that somehow that's not conservative, whatever conservative means. In the meantime, I'm also going to fix my tie. The fact is, we want a pro-family America. Virtually every person who studies the problems of crime, the problems of drug addiction, the problems of people who don't learn in school, concludes that strong families make an enormous difference. And then conservatives, having said that, wash their hands of policy, wander off, and hope people will decide to have strong families. What Donald Trump has proposed, in a program that both Ivanka Trump and Cathy McMorris Rodgers have helped shape, is that we move power from Washington to the families. That we move, instead of taking money from them in taxes, we allow them to keep their own money, the money they're making. If they're very poor, we subsidize them to some extent, because it's actually even more important to strengthen child care and to strengthen families if you're very poor, because that's where the greatest stress is in raising children. And so Trump proposes a number of very innovative ideas and proposes to pay for a good number of them by dealing with fraud. And let me say, because Donald Trump's a businessman, because he's had to deal with customers with credit cards and suppliers with credit cards, and he's had to deal with fraud inside all the various Trump businesses, he knows that a modern anti-fraud system, the kind that American Express, Visa, MasterCard use, would save the federal government tens of billions of dollars a year. So he knows if we were really to apply serious anti-fraud measures, not just bureaucratic junk, but really serious, thoughtful measures of the kind that the major credit card companies use, we would save so much money that we could, in fact, pay for the programs he's proposing. And what he is suggesting, and this is very different from Clinton and the liberals. Clinton and the liberals want to use child care as the excuse to build a bigger bureaucracy that can then be unionized, that can then be controlled by the federal government, that can then have thousands of pages of regulations. Donald Trump's moving in the opposite direction. He wants you to keep money that you can spend, that you can decide, including, by the way, stay-at-home mothers, who are, after all, providing child care. So for the very first time, there's a provision here to have a tax break for a stay-at-home mother and to recognize that she's actually providing child care. There's also provision to have a dependent savings account, which can be, money can be put in by the employer, the individual, or any family member. So from the time that the woman becomes pregnant, it actually applies to the unborn. From the time the woman becomes pregnant, you could have an account which continues to grow until the child's 18. You can use that account for a variety of services, or if it just grows and you have interest on it and it gains size, at 18, they could apply it to college as a major component of solving the problem of the cost of college or the cost of vocational school, because it could be applied either to college or vocational school. Trump also makes clear that he wants to deregulate and get out of Washington the way in which we think about child care. And he makes the point, you live in the age of Uber and Airbnb and all sorts of shared services. Shouldn't you also be looking at shared services, at community involvement, at local activity? So if 4 or 5 or 6 mothers want to share services, shouldn't you be encouraging that in their neighborhood so that they can, somebody might want to have to go to the doctor, somebody else might want to go shopping, somebody might want to have a part-time job. And so he's encouraging the kind of innovation we're seeing in the private sector that people use every single day And he's saying, why can't we have the equivalent of the efficiency and the convenience of Uber or Airbnb in the zone of child care and dependent care? Because he also has a provision where he talks about dependent care, which is people live longer. And as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and other problems affect us, there's a much bigger elder care component coming in that in itself has to have sound, positive government policy. Now, I say to my conservative friends, the difference between allowing people to keep the money they earn and creating a government bureaucracy is the difference between Trumpism and Clintonism. Clinton stands for power in Washington, for taking your money from you to build a bureaucracy which will then do for you what the bureaucracy wants to, following the bureaucracy's rules and regulations, with the decisions being made in Washington. Trump stands for fighting fraud, reducing the cost of government, returning to you the money that we save, and allowing you to make a series of decisions about how you want to raise your family and how you want to raise your children. I think that Ivanka Trump and Kathy McMorris Rodgers have done a terrific job of putting together a serious, really, you should read it, it's a fairly long outline that really does propose a serious step forward in helping strengthen families and helping working mothers. Sue Fox, I like the plan. It will help so many working class families. Could you also explain more in regards how it will be paid for? Will it work like the unemployment tax? Part of the way it gets paid for is by fighting fraud. Now, unless you think this is just one of those casual lines, the news media always, because they don't understand the issue, they always assume that it's just some shallow gimmick. I worked, when we had the Center for Health Transformation, I worked with Jim Frogue, and he developed a book with a whole series of experts, and I wrote the foreword to it. It was called Stop Paying the Crooks. And you can get Stop Paying the Crooks by Jim Frogue, and you'll find in there that we laid out that the amount of fraud we're dealing with is so staggering. And in fact, if you read a book that I've cited recently, Dreamland, by Sam Quinones, Quinones, you'll see he talks in there about people who deliberately get on disabilities in order to get the Medicaid card, in order to go to various doctors who are breaking the law, so they'll go to 5 or 6 doctors a month to get pills. Well, you, the taxpayer, are paying all that. And if you had an effective American Express, Visa, MasterCard style of information flow, you'd know the first day what was going on, and you could stop it. Our estimate, Jim Frogue worked all this through with experts, our estimate was that in Medicaid and Medicare alone, there's $110 billion a year in fraud. If you add to that disabilities, food stamps, unemployment compensation, et cetera, the numbers are staggering, easily in the $140 billion a year level. And what Trump is saying is, if you had a sound manager, you could in fact save the money, apply half of it to the national debt, and still have money left over to do the right kind of things for people who are honest and who are obeying the law. And again, that's sort of a characteristic of the whole Trump program, that if you're honest and you're obeying the law, we're for you. If you're a crook, we're not. I know it's a bold, radical change from the government of liberalism, but I think it's an important change. Ryan Allen, what will he do to help protect paternal rights? Frankly, I don't think that was in the speech, or at least it wasn't in the version I read, but I do think you can imagine from his own personal experiences that that Trump understands a great deal about the importance of fathers, the importance of sustaining fathers' rights to help raise their children, and frankly, at one level, the importance of encouraging and requiring fathers to help raise their children. Nothing would do more for the poorest neighborhoods in America than to rebond fathers to their families and to reestablish a network in which males believe they have an obligation to help raise their children. Sharon Cook, we want to see more GOP unity. Trump has laid out a strong pro-family plan. They need to get on board just like all of the other Americans that thought Trump couldn't prove himself. Well, of course we need more Republican unity, and my prediction is that after Hillary Clinton's performance on Friday and Sunday, you're going to see more unity. I mean, her statements Friday night were so disgusting and so negative that I think people are beginning to say, wait a second, that's certainly not what we want. And frankly, what happened on Sunday undermines a lot of her claim to being ready to be commander-in-chief. So I think you're going to see Trump coming together with Republicans across the country. There's a poll out this morning that shows Trump winning Ohio by 5 points. That would be a startling turn of events. There's another poll out that shows Trump winning northern Maine by a big margin and maybe winning all of Maine. That's startling because nobody had Maine as an undecided state. So things are moving, things are starting to happen, and I agree precisely with what Sharon Cook said. The part of this is happening because you're seeing a solid, steady, positive, issue-oriented performance by Donald Trump day after day after day, bringing in good ideas and having people like Ivanka Trump and Cathy McMorris Rodgers bring to bear in different zones first-rate people providing good ideas and good solutions. Candace Bakey says, would these benefits be in the form of a tax credit, and what happens to family medical leave, which is unpaid? I don't think that if my impression, again, having read the pretty complicated speech, but not being an expert on it, my impression is it doesn't deal with unpaid medical leave. I'd have to go back and look at that. It's a tax credit if you're poor, and it's a tax deduction if you're better off. It also has a part of it that applies to earned income tax credit. And I think it's very well done. It's a very sophisticated proposal that comes at the question of how do we help people take care of their families from a wide variety of backgrounds. Norm Allen, will the new senior part of the program include a livable Social Security payment for those who do not have a second income? I don't think it directly affects Social Security, but clearly by providing for the dependent account where people can save up and providing for a tax break if you're taking care of somebody who is elderly, Donald Trump is clearly taking steps that makes it easier for us to take care of the elderly. And in that sense, this is a very balanced program, focusing on the one hand on mothers and children and families, focusing on the other hand on the growing challenge we have with elders who need more elder care. Sean Connor, where do you see this country in the next 4 to 8 years? Well, that depends on who wins the election. I mean, I'm very biased. I think Hillary Clinton represents 4 years of decay, corruption, and dishonesty, and I think it will be a disaster. I think Donald Trump is a very bold entrepreneur who is going to challenge the system. I can't tell you it's going to be easy. I can't tell you it's automatically going to work, but I think it'll be such a breath of fresh air to have somebody with a business background, somebody who's outside the system, somebody who understands it's a rigged game, come in to Washington and really bring about dramatic change. That I think it will really be very, very important and very exciting. I think an America that has a Donald Trump is an America that's doing a lot of things that are dynamic, experimental, taking apart the bureaucracy, returning power to the citizens, encouraging the growth of jobs, encouraging entrepreneurship, whether it's in healthcare or space or manufacturing or national security, I think, or education. I think you'll see a dramatically more dynamic, inventive country if Trump's president. Don Varney says, as a business owner, I am thrilled to see plans like these being presented. What would they have to do to get it passed and approved? Well, if people like it a lot, and remember, you had with Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House, you had a tremendous effort focusing on positive solutions and on positive ideas in the House. That's part of why Cathy McMorris Rodgers, as the House Conference Chairman, the fourth ranking leader, is part of developing this plan with Ivanka Trump to help Donald Trump look at helping families. And I think if we win the election, you're going to see Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, and Paul Ryan, the House Republican leader, Speaker of the House, and Donald Trump and Mike Pence, the Vice President, sit down together and try to pass these things. And the way you pass them is the old-fashioned way Ronald Reagan did it. Reagan used to say his job was to show the light to the American people so they would turn up the heat on Congress. I think this plan is so positive, has so many good things going for it, that you'll see tremendous support across all backgrounds. You're going to see African Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, Native Americans, white Americans, all of them coming together and saying, here's a plan to help families, here's a plan to help mothers, here's a plan to help with elder care. This is the kind of thing America needs. It's very, very creative. And the last question is from Susan Flanagan. For those who become disabled in their 20s, their payments are so low they can't live on it. Any plans to help these people? I think we need to fundamentally rethink disability from the ground up. A lot of people who are now disabled are disabled from problems that we can solve technologically with better technology, better science. Look at the Paralympics. Look at the wounded warriors. We have an enormous ability to invest in people to not ask the question, are you disabled, but to ask the question, what are you capable of? And our goal should be to help people go through a cycle of analysis, training, investing in what they need so they can be productive, and getting them back into a full life so that they in fact can earn a decent, solid living. And that's the kind of positive future I'd like to see, and we'll report more in the near future.